Welcome to Sticky Stories That Stick. I'm your host, Amelia Forzak. If you're interested in storytelling or you just want to hear some good stories, you're in the right spot. Today, I have a very interesting guest with us, but first I just have to let you know that this episode is brought to you by Pithy Wordsmithery, a boutique firm founded by yours truly. I'm a New York Times bestselling ghostwriter, and I love helping people write and publish their books. My team and I have helped many authors turn their stories into bestsellers and their brands into thought leadership platforms. If you've ever thought about writing a book, check us out online at pithywordsmithery.com. Today, I have Dr. Wayne Nemeroff with me. Wayne is an industrial and organizational psychologist, a former professor at the School of Business at SUNY at Albany. He is currently the president and CEO of PsyMax Solutions, Human Capital Assessments, and the Nemeroff Consulting Group. Wayne has dedicated his work to helping people recognize their strengths and understand the skills they need to maximize their capabilities and grow their full potential, something that is especially needed as we enter the next industrial revolution where AI is changing everything. Wayne, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So this is an exciting time for you because you're about to be a published author.
Yes. Yeah, it's something that I've thought about for a long time. Didn't have the time. I was working too many hours a day. And then when COVID hit, sort of was stuck and started thinking about maybe this is a time for me to try. And I just started, writing little things here and there, taking notes, 2-3 pages here and there. And then at some point I said, I think maybe there really is a book here. And so that's when it started. It had a sort of a start and a stop over the last 2 years for a number of reasons. But we're finally getting to the end. It was a very big learning experience, the whole industry.
Yes, it can be a long road sometimes for writing a book with fits and starts, but I'm very excited for you that it's finally coming out. And I feel like you have such great content.
Yes.
So tell me about the book.
Well, the book basically starts off with what's happening right now and what's going to happen in the next several years. And I think people may not realize that it's going to happen much more quicker than they think is going to happen. There are going to be people that are going to go have to major changes. Some certain basic jobs that involve more just pure technical skills are going to go away because AI agents, robots are going to take over. And then these people are going to have to say, well, what do I do now? And is there a place for me in this new society? Kind of like the same way people were off the farm and were put into these big industries and they didn't know what they were supposed to do with the first revolution. And I think people are going to either deal with it and try to figure it out in a helpful way. But a lot of younger people, I think, are very nervous and almost in some ways angry about AI.
Yes. I'm seeing this with just on social media, all of the commencement speeches. Whenever somebody brings up AI, everyone boos. And the speakers are very surprised by this. But then online, it's like, oh, should they be surprised? I mean, this is the thing that's scaring the crap out of everyone.
I know some woman was very, very hurt. That's a good speaker. And she had people walk out and boo her whole thing. She couldn't get through her speech. And she was very taken back by it because she was wondering why. But whether you boo it or hate it, to the younger Gen Zs and to the millennials, I'm just going to say to them what everybody's going to say to them. One way or the other, you're eventually going to have to deal with it. This is not something that is not going to happen. It's definitely going to happen.
Yes. It's crazy. Another thing I read recently talked about how a percentage of the workforce is actively trying to sabotage their company's efforts to implement AI. And it's higher than you think. I forget exactly what it was. I think it was in the the low 30s for maybe 1 in 3 people might be doing this at work. But when it comes to Gen Z, it's more 40-some%.
Well, you also have a very unique situation where a lot of these younger folks have been sort of out of touch for the last 2 years or 3 with COVID. So they've had a very unique pre-intro to the world of work. And what you're finding is that leaders find they don't have the norms and the sociabilities to work in a company And people with very technical skills are being asked to leave because they don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to be a team player. They don't know the interpersonal skills. They don't know a lot of what I talk about in my book called soft skills or people skills, which interestingly, more times than not, studies have been done about 89% of the time when someone is asked to leave a job because they're not a match, it's because of the soft skills, not the technical skills. You very rarely say, oh, we missed it on this engineer or this IT or this accountant. We do a pretty good job of having a number of experts test those people out. But when you come in there, they don't fit because of what we call those soft skills. They're just not know how to deal with other people. They don't know how to end up making decisions. They don't have good judgment. They don't know how to end up communicating clearly. All these different things in interpersonal skills. They're not resilient. They're not persistent. All the things what we list on these 21 skills in my book, you don't have to know all 21 of them. But for certain jobs, some of them are going to be more important. And the more you can build these in your repertoire, the more likely you're going to be able to compete with other people. Because a lot of things that used to differentiate people were how good they were on the technical skills. And if robots are doing all of that, then leaders are going to look for people who not only could do that, but everything being equal, how are their soft skills? Can they trust to delegate them and leave them on their own? And they're going to do what gets done without having to follow up, every 2 minutes. So all these things, I think, are going to become increasingly important. AI will still be, and the technical skills will still be paramount. You have to know those. But once those are equal, the differentiator really could be in the future your non-technical skills.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. So I have your seven part framework in front of me, and setting directions, number one. So you kind of have these in order. So we're talking about a person having purpose and vision and being able to prioritize what's important.
Yeah.
And that's something that AI needs a lot of context to be able to do, right? Humans can still do that better. And we're not there yet for AI. Are you scared that AI is going to come into some of these soft skills at some point?
I don't think there's certain things that I don't believe they're ever going to be able to do. They're not going to be able to have empathy. They're not going to have caring. They're not going to have judgment, decision-making, problem-solving that involve understanding people. There's going to be very specific skills that they won't be able to do. But the whole idea of purpose, I really lodged onto that at the beginning and being organized. I believe that there's such a high percentage of people, like about 60% of the people, and I've seen even up to 80%, would leave their job tomorrow if they could. Right now, the job market's terrible for these young people, but it will get better. I know they don't believe that, but it really will sort itself out. Unfortunately, it's going to take a little time. But if you can decide, what do I really want to do in work? What do I love doing? What would I like to do every day? Don't think of it in terms of a job. Think of it in terms of tasks. I love dealing with people. I love negotiating for contracts. I don't like doing a bunch of numbers and doing actuarial tables. I don't like sitting in a room all by myself without interacting with others. Most people get jobs because they're good at a particular area in school. I'm good in mathematics. Therefore, I was able to get a job in an accounting firm during my second year of college. I went to work. They offered me to come back the following summer. They gave me an internship and some money, which was helpful. And then they offered me a job out of school. I'm not crazy about it, but I am good with numbers. I'm now maybe thinking of starting a family or already have a family and have one child. And so I'll take the job as an accountant. And it's not a bad job. It's a good job. And then about 5, 10 years later, I'll go in and I'll be asked to work with this person because their productivity is not good. They're disenchanted. They're disengaged. And you start talking to them and they say, Dr. Nemeroff, I really don't want to do this for the next 20, 30 years. It's not a bad job, but I'm going crazy here. There's got to be something better in life for me to do. I am not happy. In fact, I'm miserable. I feel like I'm in a rut and I can't get out of it. I've got a mortgage. I'm sort of sitting here and getting, stuck. What do I do? And I think, first of all, We do not do a good job of teaching people what to look for in terms of jobs. We basically all tie it to how good your grade point average is and what subjects you're good at and what you like to do. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. You should do what you like to do. But above and beyond, you should be choosing tasks or a job, and you should be choosing a company that match what you really want to do that's going to make you happy and fulfilled. And you should choose a company whose values match your values. So if you're a Ben and Jerry's, which is a very liberal, progressive, do well with people, very people oriented, and you're working for a company that, a higher tech company, which still cares about people, but is pretty much more of a cutthroat, higher powered, past focus, you either do the job or you won't be here. If your values are not matching that company, it's a big reason why people leave. And third, people leave because they don't like their boss. You should be looking at what's good for you and get yourself into an area that when you look back, you don't say, I spent 50 years doing something that I really didn't like. It's just amazing how many people do not like what they're doing. And I think just because they're not trained to sort of look at not just a job, but what do I really like doing and do well, and get yourself, and then build skills around that as you go on. You're going to need technical skills. And we do a terrible job from school all the way into how we choose jobs, unfortunately.
I just had a sales call with someone who's interested in writing a book right before this, talking about how we need to do a better job of educating elementary school kids on the jobs that are available in the world, because it's really unclear to them, other than it's like you could be a nurse or a teacher or a firefighter, like niching down into like, no, there are really like a million jobs out there. Here's how you learn about them. It is hard.
Yeah. And, you go to a guidance counselor and they could be great. They're going to take out all your scores, take out your vocation scores, but it's all geared towards jobs. You're a policeman, a fireman, a doctor. I mean, it's not, you enjoy really being organized and putting a lot of things together and trying to figure out how things fit together. And let's look for jobs, because that will give you a purpose where you get up every morning and say, I like what I'm doing. It doesn't mean every day has to be great, but for the most part, I'm enjoying this. And when you don't enjoy it, go look for something else that maybe you enjoy more. Once you're in that situation that I don't like it, most people are stuck. You've got a mortgage, you're paying for a mortgage, your kids are going to school, they don't want to leave the area, your wife or husband has a job. And now, how do you pull all that out? The job market right now is bad. So I'm afraid if I go somewhere else, it's not going to be any better and I may earn less money. So you basically grin and bear it. And some people grin and bear it for a year or two and finally find something else. And because they're looking at the same criteria, they may not find anything else that's different to what they had. Or they end up not finding what they want and they get into a worse situation because they're using the same old ideas of what will I do. And it's usually I want to make money. I want to have security, which is great things to have. But what else do you really want to do that you'd love to? If the money was no object and you can do anything you want, what would you do for the next 20 years, 10 years?
I think that's a great way of looking at it, a non-conventional way to think about work. Do you want to work around people or not? Do you want to be client-facing or not? Do you like your job to have a lot of surprises, or do you want to know exactly what's going to happen? All of those can really affect your day-to-day so much. We worked with an author recently who wrote a book kind of on this topic, but for nursing. And it's called Find Your Fit. And it's about how so many people go into nursing and it ends up being completely different than they thought. And it's because the job of being a nurse is totally different depending on what unit you're in. If you're in the ER, things are crazy. You never know what's going to happen. People are in and out. You never build relationships with patients because it's so quick. If you're doing like surgery or you're helping out with surgery, like you never talk to the patient really because they're asleep, but you always know what's going to happen. And so it's like an extremely different reality, like totally different situation that a lot of people don't know going into that career path. And I would say that's probably true for a lot of industries where it has like a the vibe is completely different depending on the job that you're in, the company that you're working for. So there's probably just so much variation that if you are really aware of what you want and what doesn't work for you, you're going to end up in a better spot.
Yeah, and companies, we do work. I do work for companies. A lot of organizational psychologists do, and we test them for personality tests and stuff like that. But the fact is, if you're really good in, let's say, being a manager somewhere or doing something particular, but you're not really that great with people, and you tend to rub people the wrong way, more than likely you're going to get the job. But they're going to say, "We want you to work with a counselor to be able to learn that." Well, people don't change so easily. But the chances are, when push comes to shove, they're giving more weight to the technical skills than to the non-technical skills, feeling they can work that out. And when they don't work it out, which is many times, sometimes I have to let them go. Sometimes I call in a person with me that tries to salvage it for them. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. It really depends upon how much the person really wants to change. But in the future now, I don't think you're going to have as much of a choice. And I think companies, and I mentioned this in the book, I focus a lot on employees. I talk about from the company side. And from an organizational side, we're going to have to do a much better job of learning about what are the strengths and weaknesses or developmental needs of the soft skills, and how does that impact the balance sheet, including the hard skills. And if we miss it, it's going to be an issue because that's going to come into play in total success. And it really is going to be very different. I mean, there are people predicting now the work is going to change dramatically in the next 10 years. People are talking about a 3.5-day work week. Some people are even saying 3 days is a very possibility within 10 years to 20 years from now. I mean, some people are even going.
So you don't think we're just going to have to keep working harder and producing more for the same amount of money in the same time?
It brings up, Amelia, the question of what are we going to do? What are the social activities from a society standpoint? People work 3 days a week. They have all this extra free time. What do they do with that free time? And yes, money. How do people earn the same amount of money, but they're only going to be working maybe 60% of the time that they used to work at the beginning of the 2000s, and now it's 2048, and they're only working 3 days or 3.5 days a week. It has tremendous implications that I don't know if it impacts us so much, but our kids, I've got 4 grandchildren, and I told them, what you're going to be dealing with is going to be such a different world and work than what I grew up with, and it will be.
Yeah. Tell me more about the soft skills. This is turning into something where now companies are actually going to be developing these, helping employees develop these, which is not something that's really happened in the past. They've all been focused on like technical training and that kind of thing. Do you have a story where a client maybe put work into developing one of these skills and that totally changed someone's trajectory or changed their business by focusing on some of that stuff?
Yes, I do. In fact, in each one of my chapters, there's 21 chapters in addition to an introduction and conclusion. I give a kind of a short story of 21 different people, real people, and we tie what they did and learned into the soft skills. So it makes it much more realistic. So you're going to get 21 different Reader Digest kind of synopsis at the beginning of each story. And we're also going to have, if you have a job, what are the implications if you do the scale well, and what if you don't do it well? And then at the back end of the book, we're going to say, if you want to build this skill to be stronger, here are very specific things to do. And if you need to add this skill to your repertoire, or what's called upskilling, here's what you need to do. So there's a lot of stuff. We're not just saying have it. We're giving you a kind of almost a workbook of exactly, if you choose to do it, what to do.
Yeah.
But
give me a little preview here, or a story. Yeah. Give me something juicy here for stories that stick.
Yeah. That's usually what I usually am called in for this kind of stuff That's here's a manager. He was a very top manager, highly technical business. And he kept on having people that were working for him and around him that, in a couple of cases, threatening to quit. They tried to hold him back as it was a startup mom and pop business that turned out to be a very huge company, bought companies and sold companies. And so they didn't want to lose this guy. He was with them for a long time. But they also had other people that had grown up with the company that were like part of the family, and they didn't want them to lose. So they called me in. I talked to him, and his main issue is he's an old timer. He's kind of gruff. He gets things done, and he makes a lot of money for the company. But things, really are very, very to the point. If you need to get something done, you don't miss it. A deadline is a deadline. And so people learn to do that. But he didn't say it necessarily in a very diplomatic way. He was very blunt, straightforward, candid, if you wish, to a fault. And he was blowing people out of the water. And I said to this guy, let's call him Joe, that's not his name. I said, Joe, you're causing a lot of problems with these other people. And he was giving some feedback, so I'm not telling him something he did. And they have trouble working for you, want to be changed to some other place, or want to leave the company. And obviously, these are good people. I don't assume you don't want to leave. And the company doesn't want to lose. So what can you do? He says, well, I don't think right now, he says, I'm close to 50 years old, I'm 47 years old. He says, I don't think I can change. I am who I am. If I start becoming a nicer guy and things start getting not done as well and missing deadlines and we don't get the productivity out to the extent we got it out, then I have a big problem because, one, it's going to make lose money, and two, I take pride in my production. I said, it's not just a matter of being a nice guy. These soft skills are not just being nice so people walk all over you. They're skills that you can learn, interpersonal skills that talk about how to do things. For example, let's take listening, a basic skill. This guy's not a listener. He tells you what to do, and he says, just go do it. And some people aren't sure exactly what he wants, but they're afraid of him, so they don't go back and say, Joe, tell me again what you wanted, because Joe will think they're stupid. So they go and they do it wrong, and Joe obviously hits him over with a 2x4. So I said, by stopping and saying at the end of a meeting, is everybody on board? Does everybody understand what to do? Are there any questions? It's perfectly okay at this point in time to ask questions. You don't understand it. And do what's called paraphrasing, listening, clarification. Paraphrasing is, what I see you're telling me, Amelia, is that in the area of the Trex line, you're not sure how they're fitting together and that you think there's room for improvement. Is that right? Well, yeah, Wayne, but there's more than that. All right, well, tell me more, please. Clarification is also something like that. Summary is, okay, so here's what we decided to do. 1, 2, 3. Is everybody agreeing on that? Why don't we write up a summary of that and give it to anybody? And if you have any other questions, come and ask me. That's not being a nice guy. That's increasing the likelihood that your people know what to do and they're not afraid to ask you. And I said, I'll tell you how this style comes about. Let's take 4 different kinds of soft skills. One is feedback. You give feedback. Somebody does something, you tell them they did a great job or they didn't do a great job. Okay? Your feedback scores that you end up telling in a very direct way when you don't do things well. Yeah, I let them know about it so they don't do it again. No, it's fine. Your praise quotient of giving them encouragement and telling them when they do something right is near the bottom, like 12%. He says, these are big men, Wayne. I don't have to go and tell them and pat them on the back. And I says, well, it's not telling them on the back, but when you let somebody know what they did and it was done well, you reinforce that behavior because you think they automatically know that that's a great behavior that they should continue. Maybe they do, and maybe they don't. You're missing an opportunity to reinforce a behavior you want to see repeated. All right?
Such simple things, but people don't know that, right?
Right. Now, if you take and you look at your task orientation it's off the board, meaning you're very results oriented, very much task oriented, results oriented. That's how you get the numbers. But your empathy scores are very low.
And just to be clear, so everyone's following us, you're getting these scores from assessments that you've done.
From a session that I ran from him on a scale we call the work style matcher. It's a questionnaire that I've developed. And you get feedback, and you tie some of that data in that he's getting. You can do it either by the person himself or by 360. I mean, you can have peers, direct reports, bosses fill it out. But I always go in with some data, or at least interview other people. So I'm not just getting what he tells me, I'm sharing what other observer data.
So it's like, here's how
now I have the information. I'm opening up his blind side. Mm-hmm. Now he could disagree with it, he can fight it, but there are ways I gotta say, hey, at this point, rather than fight it, just listen. You can do what you want with it.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I think it's something that people who do a lot of 360s, sometimes they dread it. It's like an anxiety thing, but it ultimately makes people better, or it's supposed to give constructive feedback, or the opportunity for your consultant to come in and give you constructive feedback, where it's like, you're in the 12th percentile for praise. You never tell anybody they're doing a good job. How do we, first of all, show that it's important to do that and show the value, and see how it also fixes other issues by doing that?
And giving praise and encouragement is important for people, even experienced people. It doesn't mean you have to overdo it, but you should let them know when they've done something. I think everybody wants a little bit of encouragement that they're on the right track.
Yes. My very first book that I ever wrote, I worked for an employee survey company, and we had data from over 1 million people on what made them engaged at their job. Back then, I was talking about employee engagement. The number one thing was recognition. It's just thanking people and telling them that they did a good job was more important than anything else. Even more important than they feel passionate about their company's mission, or they like their boss. If they're getting just general feedback that they're appreciated, that's the number one thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And before I walked into that meeting with Joe, I already knew he did that. Why? One of the, whatever graphs you use, whatever tests you use, and there's a lot of them, organizational psychologists use different ones. The ones that I use, they paint the picture. And you not only look at a score, you look at combinations. So I looked at Joe is low on empathy, high on task, and he's high on feedback. What do you think the odds are of him giving more praise or more criticism? High task, low empathy.
Yeah.
Probably he's going to kick him in the rear end before he's going to pat him on the back. You say, all right, so you knew that. I said, but it tells me you have a problem? He said, what? I said, look at your communication skills. Communication on this instrument is telling people what you want them to do with a high degree of clarity. All right? So if you're not clear, if you say, Wayne, I want you to do this, 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 and this, and I walk away thinking, what the hell did she just say? I scratch my head. I'm not sure. But if you're a Joe kind of person, I'm not going back and asking her. I'm just going to do it. Chances are I'm not going to do it exactly the way you want. And then when I don't do it, the Joe comes down, gets pissed, and hits me over the head with a 2x4. So in effect, he's creating a gotcha. He's setting them up not to really understand. He'll always say, well, they can always come and ask me. And you say, Joe, no, they can't. You think they can, but they really can't. And then when they don't, you let them have it really good. So people are walking around in eggshells. I don't have to do an expensive attitude survey to know there are issues in your group with you. And that's just one example of one combination. And most times when I review with people, hopefully it's an eye opener and they don't walk out threatened, but they woke out that they just were given a gift to get more insight into something they didn't realize they were doing. Now, whether they want to change, whether they think they have the ability to change, who knows? But Joe swore he couldn't change. So I did something with Joe. I was sitting in a room with him, and I was going back and forth. I said, Joe, tell me, okay, you don't want to change. Don't tell me you can't. And the reason I said that is you say, I don't want to change. You're taking responsibility. Because It's you that's just saying don't. If you tell me you can't, there's too many things in the way, then you've empowered other things to be responsible that you can't do it. I said, let me ask you this. If I were to write you a check right now, in the next 6 months, we can work together and you can ask open-ended questions and you can do better listening and you can end up following up, making sure people do it without being, so harsh. You're still going to have high standards. You're still going to make sure they produce at high levels, but you're going to gradually fine-tune and bend a little bit, okay? You think if I wrote you a check for $1 million, well, he laughed. He said, Wayne, you don't have $1 million. I said, let's pretend I did. Let's pretend I had $10 million. I just won a big, lotto. And I were to sincerely offer you that amount of money. What do you think the odds of you changing in 6 months are not? So he laughed. He says, well, I'd probably give it a shot for the money. So I say, don't tell me you can't change. Tell me there's not an incentive for you to change that you think it's worth it. So now you've got to decide, do you want to keep on doing what you're doing, possibly losing your job or causing other people to leave the company, or not? And he laughed. We started developing some trust. And within about 6 months, he didn't become Mr. Nice Guy, like great overnight, but he learned to emit behaviors that were much more effective in dealing with his people, and everything calmed down. Now, not all of those are winners like that. It's not all that easy, but that's an example of showing them the blind spot and understanding what their behavior is doing, because those people don't understand or analyze their behavior. And that's really what a coach does.
Well, it's tricky because you have 21 different things on here, and I'm looking through these thinking, I'm like, ooh, what do I need to get better at? And there's so many things that I think that it's like, it is genuinely difficult to be good at all of these at the same time. It's 21 things to focus on, right? Like, even if we're decent at these, like, I'm sure everyone has room to improve that would make a noticeable difference to the people you work with.
It would, but you don't all do all 21. First of all, you're probably good at a number of them. You may not realize it. You're probably better than you think. You're just doing it unconscious competence. You're doing it, but you're not sure how you're doing it. The other thing is, you start off by looking at your job. So if you're going to get a promotion, should I take it or not? What are the skills that you don't have? So let's say you've never done strategic planning, but you're very good at day-to-day strategic working and finding out what to do. You're very good at a lot of things that job needs, but you're really weak in strategic planning. And I would say one of the up skills is you've got to learn to do a better strategic planning. What's your developmental plan to do strategic planning? So if you're in your current job and you're not totally effective and you get a performance review and your boss says you're weak on, being a team player, you tend to be much more independent and just write text to people, but you really don't collaborate and people don't feel you're part of the team. You're not a partner with them, partnering. So that's something that your boss wants you to do. Other people want you to do. Says, well, Wayne, I really am an independent guy. I said, I know, but in this organization, I once had a group that came in that bought a company that their whole culture was collaboration. They worked in small groups with a lot of interfunctional crossing of different boundaries. And they took over, and this guy, after a while, was told he's got to do better. And he said, I don't think I can. I've never been, not that I don't want to be a collaborator, I'm an independent guy. I tend to do something, and I don't want to go and ask a bunch of people what to do because they slow me down. I just go get it down. So it's another one where I was called in. And then sometimes it comes down to a choice. If you don't want to do it, that's fine. But understand the consequences. If you don't want to do it, eventually they're going to ask you to leave, or you're going to have to pick up and leave. What happens sometimes is worse when you have a lack of engagement is people always aren't asked to leave right away, and people don't pick up and leave right away. Like right now, today's environment, they do what I say, they quit and stay. They do just enough to get by, not to get fired, but they're not really giving it their all because they're not happy. They're not engaged.
That's what I was just thinking. It's not just the company. It's like the person's miserable doing that. It's like they have a job, they're getting paid, but no one wants to live like that.
No, and at the end of the book, I start talking about philosophy and stuff in terms of what it's all about and what's work really meant to be. And you're not supposed to spend the majority of your life, 70% of the time, doing something that you don't enjoy. I mean, isn't that a shame that so many people really don't like their work, their job? We've got to find a better way. And I think as we go down to a smaller work week and as we get rid of a lot of these technical jobs, it's going to increase more for people to find something. What do I do in this new modern world? And I don't want to redo what I did in the past. Maybe this is an opportunity for me to find something that I didn't know I liked, but I really do like.
Yeah.
And you see people that give up 350,000 jobs and go and open a little store and open an art store. And they've always wanted to be an artist. They're not great artists, but they love selling paintings and on commission. And they are happier than a pig in you know what. And they never would have done it. They're not making 350,000, but these aren't clients. These are friends that, Wayne, I've never been happier in my life. I am so less stressed. I'm enjoying what I'm doing. He says, I'm so happy I recognize this. So I think it's important for all of us to find what is our life about and what do we really want to do for the few years really that we're here. And it goes by fast, I'll tell you, faster than I thought at this point.
Aw. I love that this book is a call to find a job that you really enjoy. And I think it's a great read for anyone, especially younger people who are entering the workforce or anybody who's kind of just, they feel about their job, right? To figure out what are the skills and what are they interested in and figure out really where their strengths are that they can apply that and be in a situation where they're happy.
Yeah, and what are their values? Values are important too. You read values. If your values aren't aligned, there's a thing about the great mismatch that I came up with this term. And you talk about your other person that wrote fit. I do talk about you have to find the right fit job for you. What do you have going for you and your strengths and limitation that you do and enjoy doing? There's actually a matrix you'll see in the book that talks about 4 different. I like my job. I don't like my job. I'm good at it. I'm not good at it. And those 4 quadrants have all 4 different implications.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, I'm excited for the book to come out. It should be happening soon. So by the time this episode comes out, you should be able to get it online. Wayne, where can people go to stay connected with you?
They could reach me at Nemeroff at PsyMax Solutions, and I'll spell that. PsyMax Solutions, SOLUTIONS.com. I have a Gmail, that's my personal one. And the website, if they wanted to check it out, is a www.workstylematcher.com. You don't have to buy the thing, but that will show you how these things can be done on the internet. You can do it on yourself or you can do it on somebody you want to hire, but it gives you an idea. And we've been running that website for a long time with many clients.
Amazing. Well, Wayne, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. I really appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure.
Amazing.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So again, I'm Amelia Forzak. I'm the founder of Pithy Wordsmithery. And to quote Toni Morrison, if there's a book out there that you want to read but hasn't been written yet, you must write it. Join us next time.